Hi, welcome. I'm excited for you to join us for our third episode of the AI Office Hour. Today, we're going to explore the latest announcements from Microsoft's Build 2025. As Satya Nadella called it, the open agentic web, a new era where intelligent agents are not just tools, but collaborators in our workflow, our data, and our decision-making. I'm Jen MacIvor, Covenant Technologies AI Strategy Consulting leader and client manager. Today, I'm joined by our principal architect and Microsoft MVP, Kurt Rolland. He'll help us unpack what was announced during the build and what that means to us as decision makers. We'll explore 5 main areas: the agent store, multi-agent orchestration, how M365 Copilot's being fine-tuned, the role of Dataverse, in addition, the model context protocol and the Python code interpreter. Kurt, welcome. And thanks for helping us unpack. There sure was a lot announced. Let's get right into it. What is the agent store?
Yeah. Hey, Jen, how are you? And nice to join everybody. I'm joining here from sunny, beautiful Washington, Missouri. And so we are having some great weather here. So I think this first question here, Jen, is around multi-agent orchestration. So one of the big announcements coming out of Build 2025 is this idea of being able to take and group teams of agents with specialized roles together to create an overall solution or process flow. So, Microsoft has been moving to mature the whole agent story. And last year, the big emphasis was on the ability to easily and quickly develop single agents within the M365 Copilot architecture through things like personal agent creation, then SharePoint agents, Copilot Studio, and so forth. And now with Build, they're announcing this really exciting new approach, which is to take multiple agents and allow them to work together, as I said, to basically fulfill or support an entire process. So I know we have a video coming up on this. So
to enable multi-agent orchestration, start on the New Agents list page. You can see that there are several agents already added from Copilot Studio, Azure AI Foundry, Fabric, and the M365 Agents SDK. Click Add an Agent and select the type of agent you'd like to add. You can select from the list of available agents and choose one to connect. Once connected, you can make a request that requires the use of 2 agents. The agent responds by calling both agents. Here it submits an access request and makes 2 room bookings for me, and summarizes its actions.
So that's really interesting, Kurt. I think it's perfect. It's great timing for many companies, right? We've seen a lot of folks gain traction with conversational agents that bring to light HR information. That's a very popular early use case. Can you explain some business problems that we might solve with the multi-agent orchestration?
yeah, absolutely. So when we have thought about agents in the past, we've kind of thought of single purpose agents, right? Maybe a retrieval agent or a team-based agent, something like this. And really all the functionality, the logic was put into a single agent. Well, now with the multi-agent architecture, what you're able to do is you might have a process or an orchestrator agent, which is kind of the brains of your overall process. And then what you would do is you would develop other agents that have particular skills around performing tasks, for example. So it may be a combination of maybe one agent goes and retrieves information from a knowledge source or a knowledge base, and then another agent may take that information and go out and perform one or more actions using a connector, for example, to update a third-party system, okay? And so underneath all of this, you have a process agent or an orchestration agent, if you will, that's actually handing off work to these individual, I'll call them worker agents.
It sounds like it's really important to understand not just the technology, right, and how it comes together. Ever so important to really understand how your business processes work or how you want them to work. How does orchestration handle conflict or prioritization between agents?
Yeah, well, a lot of that happens in what's called the plan. And so with this new architecture moving forward, what you would do is you would describe a plan to the process agent, telling it exactly what individual agent tasks might be, for example. And of course, in that instruction set, you want to make sure that you provide clarity to the plan to ensure that there's no overlap. Because if you have overlap, then you do, as you say, have conflict, right? And so, once you define that plan, the process agent then can take all of that then and essentially develop the handoff routes and so forth between the different agents.
All right, fantastic. There's a lot here. Let's move on to our next topic. Help us understand Dataverse for agents.
Yeah. So one of the other big announcements is that Dataverse is not only a knowledge source, if you will, for agents, meaning that you can store your data in Dataverse tables and be able to access it using generative AI. But it's also becoming the actual primary store for this multi-agent architecture, at least as it relates to the M365 environment, right? So the idea is if you're using something like Copilot Studio, for example, to build out your process map that we kind of just talked about, right? Then what Copilot Studio is going to do is it's actually going to use Dataverse as the agent store mechanism. So all of the agents that you create, kind of the handoff routes and so forth, all of this gets stored within Dataverse. It's I wouldn't say it's hidden, but it's kind of obscured because you basically get to this through Copilot Studio. But I guess the important or key takeaway here is that Dataverse is not only a knowledge source or knowledge base, okay, for the actual specific process knowledge that you may use in an agent, but it's also the main storage and kind of routing mechanism now for Copilot Studio.
All right. So what are the advantages of using Dataverse for grounding, task execution, and even autonomous operations? Could you help us kind of recap those advantages?
Yeah, absolutely. So, looking at the diagram here, we can see that probably the simplest agent is the retrieval agent, and we've seen us use that as it relates to files stored in SharePoint, or perhaps even uploaded into the agent. Now, these files can also be stored within Dataverse. You can see down below. So Dataverse now can become the storage mechanism for files. In addition, of course, Dataverse being a first-order relational database, can also store structured data. So again, we're looking at both unstructured data as well as structured data now being able to be stored within Dataverse. And again, because you got this sort of record-based system, when it comes to things like autonomous agents over on the far right, triggers and updates and these kinds of things are pretty easy to uncover or be able to use, let's say, within the overall multi-agent architecture. So, you may have one agent perform one particular task. Maybe it writes a record into a Dataverse table, which then is a trigger that causes another agent, let's say, to launch to perform some other task.
So it sounds like Microsoft has really announced some leaps forward in architecture, right? So multi-agent orchestration and using the Dataverse as a backbone. Let's look at our next topic. Talk to us about the Python code interpreter. Why is this important?
Yeah, this is really a powerful addition that Microsoft has added into Copilot Studio. So let's kind of paint paint the situation here. So the situation, let's say, is that you're developing a conversational agent, right? And let's say the conversational agent is working with retrieval-based knowledge, and that knowledge is coming, let's say, from files. Again, the files are either in SharePoint or in Dataverse or something like this. And at some point, what you'd like the generative conversation to include is some kind of visualization, right? So when I say visualization, we're moving now from text-based responses or even something like adaptive cards to, let's say, a dynamic charting response. And there is an example here on the screen, right? But the idea here is that using Python code, we could actually dynamically generate output and have it pop or flow within the conversation itself. Okay, pretty amazing stuff.
Wow. I can see how that really starts to enable the power of these agents. So I can imagine the opportunity has really been unleashed to create agents across the enterprise. Talk to us about the agent store. What does that do for us?
Yeah, so as we've seen the evolution of agents occur over the last number of months and year, let's say, we've pretty much, when it comes to agents, in terms of what's available, right, you have first-party agents that have been built by Microsoft. So, for example, you have things like the analysis agent, you have the reasoning agent or the research agent. You have a number of different agents that Microsoft has been building, and these get offered, within the agentic building experience. There have also been ISVs that have slowly come on board and have offered their own third-party agents. The neat thing about the agent store, though, is finally this has become open now to partners, Microsoft partners, other kinds of partners, as well as organizations, to begin to develop their own agents and then deploy them in the agent store for public availability, right? So you can now go to a single place and deploy those agents, make them available for purchase, for monetization, in a single one-stop shop.
So the agent store, while the architecture is really important and the capabilities of building agents for the enterprise specifically, it sounds like I also, right, as the enterprise decision maker, can and should consult the store because, likely, possibly, my particular business problems have been addressed with agents in the store. And then, of course, that will continue to be enhanced by all the Microsoft partners as they work with different companies. That's a real advantage. All right, so we've talked about the backbone, the Dataverse backbone, multi-agent orchestration. We can build this yourselves. You can look at the agent store. This next move truly is a leap forward. Talk to us about the Model Context Protocol, or what you like to refer to, right, is MCP.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go ahead and play the video real quickly here,
right,
which will kind of set the stage.
Context Protocol, or MCP, is a standardized open protocol that simplifies how AI models and agents interact with external data and tools. MCP facilitates seamless interoperability among AI tools by enabling effective communication between diverse AI systems. Let's take a look at a real-world example of the integration of an existing MCP server with Copilot Studio. First, we'll navigate to Copilot Studio, select our agent, and click on Actions. Next, we'll search for our MCP server, GitHub, or browse through the connectors list to find it. Once we locate the GitHub Knowledge Server, we'll select it and proceed with authentication. And just like that, we've successfully authenticated and connected our GitHub MCP server in Copilot Studio. By integrating MCP with Copilot Studio, users can easily connect their own data sources and tools into the platform. This integration minimizes the necessity for users to develop and maintain custom connectors, providing greater flexibility and a broader range of actions within connectors.
Okay, so I'm just going to say, wow, right? A number of years ago, we kind of collectively in enterprise technology and technology software developers leveraged APIs, right? So every software that you might purchase as a company or subscribe to has an API layer, protocols where you can connect your data. This seems like the whole nother level. Could you unpack that for us?
Yeah,
Help us understand what that means.
yeah, absolutely. So the Model Context Protocol was a specification developed by Anthropic. And basically what this does is it abstracts the API layer, as you described, Jen. So, what you'd have to do before is you'd have to write a custom connector. I mean, if the API is exposed, that's awesome. But you'd still have to write the custom connector to be able to interact with that API. Now with MCP, these third-party providers now can actually offer an MCP server essentially as something that you can subscribe to and begin to use the tools and features immediately. So, let's take, for example, ServiceNow. ServiceNow could take their API and create an MCP server with that. And then that MCP server can be consumed within Copilot Studio, and then I immediately have access to whatever API calls that they expose to the MCP protocol, right? And that becomes available then immediately right within Copilot Studio.
So, you know what, Kurt, I'm struck with this thought where we've seen in the last 2 years excitement, experimentation. We've seen people develop proof of concepts and push hard to create sustainable business value. What this really means is a company really needs to get clear on their strategy. Not only the strategy of how can AI drive their organizational value, drive their business strategy, but the technology strategy is really important, right? Because, proceeding without clarity is you're just going to have to unravel later. I think that kind of working across kind of technology leadership, leveraging experts in this space is ever more important. Yeah. So, question for you: does MCP improve performance or reliability of agents?
Well, I think it improves perhaps the sort of completion quotient. In other words, how quickly can you create your agent versus as the video indicated, rather than having to spend time writing a custom connector, right? Your speed to agent completion is greatly increased. Now, reliability, of course, is increased as well because for those organizations providing or offering MCP servers, right? I mean, it's kind of under their SLA in a sense, right? I mean, they're basically saying, hey, we're offering this MCP now available to you, and we've tested it, so on and so forth. We know it works, so here you go, have at it and use it. As opposed to the reverse side, which is hey, I got to have my internal team write a custom connector to go against their API and so on and so on and so on, right?
Really puts the quality on software vendors, right? And therefore really should amp up the quality. How about, so we've seen people struggle with agents or even kind of complex prompts, maintaining context, right? Maintain context across conversations or workflows. What role does the MCP play in maintaining context?
Yeah, well, so let's say hypothetically we're using the generative orchestration capability within Copilot Studio, and what we've done is we've let's say included knowledge sources from a number of different MCP providers, right? right within our one single agent, let's say, right? Or perhaps we're using multi-agent orchestration, and we have different agents that are focused on different particular work tasks or workloads, and each of them, right, have consumed an MCP server, right? In terms of establishing context, right, all of that data, right, within the context of either the single agents or the process agent, right, is all kept essentially within that agentic session, right, that runs.
Got it. Yeah, something I think that again, as our agents get more complex and embedded into business operations, is essential. Microsoft also announced the large language model fine-tuning. Could you touch on that?
Yeah, this is really key here. So, we've seen again a lot of quick maturation with regards to with large language models. So, in the early days, the large language models were few and they were limited, right? And then we kind of saw an explosion in the ability to bring your own large language model, or at least select a large language model from a catalog, which is amazing, right? Because it was quite expansive. So you could choose to use a different large language model based on your particular industry or application or whatever. Now what we're seeing is Microsoft's offering the ability to fine tune based on a base LLM. So, for example, an organization may decide that what they'd like to do is they'd like to fine tune a GPT-4o large language model with some of their own sample data, right? So Microsoft now is offering that ability, so you can essentially develop your own custom LLM derivative off of a base model. Now, the advantage to that, of course, is that you are going to be able to provide much more specific context when you use that particular large language model within your agents. Okay, so we've seen that when we use a base large language model, what we do is we have to add context through RAG, retrieval augmented generation, which is the ability to add supplementary files and so forth to that. With a fine-tuned model, though, we are less reliant on RAG because more and more of the specificity is built into the model itself.
So how help me understand a little bit further. So how would I, if I'm a technology team or an enterprise company, customize Copilot to bring in the language that we use in the business, right? How do I make sure, right, that it understands maybe that I'm a medical service provider for physical therapy, for example? How does that work?
Yeah, so again, if we're looking at the LLM fine-tuning, right, what would happen again is that the organization would select the most appropriate base LLM to use, okay? And then from that, what they would do is with their training data, they would essentially add that specificity, okay? What did you say, medical?
Yeah, physical therapy service provider.
Physical therapy, okay, right. So that kind of training data, right, would be added into the model, and the model would be trained and tuned essentially based on that additional set. So again, when we talk about quality of generative AI results, right, we're talking about the content, the LLM, and the prompt, okay? In this case, what we're doing is we're bringing closer together the content and then the LLM side of the equation, right? In that we're saying, hey, you know what, because we're fine-tuning the LLM and it's becoming more and more specific, let's say to the particular industry or use, I don't have to worry as much about providing that additional context or content through retrieval augmented generation because it's built now within the model. See, yeah.
Right. This really shifts that. We spent a year helping people understand how to provide context in their prompts, etc., and it really shifts that burden away. So within the work context, within the Microsoft platform, that's all can all be developed and just a part of the system. So I, as a user, don't have.
Well, yeah, and we're very, very much in the early days of this. Even though things are moving so rapidly, I would say we're still in the early days of this. I mean, I don't think it's too far off right? To say that, being able to train a unique large language models will become something as simple as using a spell checker in Word or something like that, right? I mean, I think that level of specificity is going to get easier and easier and easier to do. The tools are going to be easier and easier. And this is just going to become part of the way that we work.
That's a great segue. I wanted to ask you, how do you see, right, this role of agents evolving in the enterprise, right, over the next, let's just go 12 to 18 months? How do you see it evolving?
Yeah, so I think the first stage of evolution is trying to figure out what roles or tasks make the most sense to hand off, if you will, to agents. So, this isn't an all or nothing, hey, AI is going to come replace your job or your job role or something like that, right? I think it's going to start with fairly unique or fairly specific tasks being defined or offloaded to agents. And these will be the most mundane kinds of tasks, right? It's the things that people don't like to do anyway, right? We're going to let the agents do that. What that should do is that should allow us as humans to be able to, I wouldn't say maybe redefine our work, but maybe define work in something that's more satisfying, so to speak, right? And allow us to grow more in more creative endeavors and hopefully reduce the amount of kind of trivial, repetitive tasks. So the important thing for us as people, right, is to learn how to work with agents, not avoid it, but figure out the best way to work with agents, right? Because they're only there to help us.
Right. It seems like it's going to take practice for all of us.
Yep.
You and I were on a call a week or so ago, and our organization is working to leverage the agents, right? They're coming from Microsoft. And one of the things that I'm excited, we spend a lot of time in meetings, right? Teams meetings. And oftentimes a meeting results in, okay, let's follow up and have another meeting, right? And so I'm kind of looking forward to the agents being able to consistently say, okay, schedule a meeting on Tuesday. I think we're all available, and going ahead and putting that on our calendar.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the initial agentic tasks, right, are around, let's say, documenting, ambient information, right? So when we talk about a meeting, the ambience, right, is the discussion that you're having within the meeting, right? So you have a facilitator agent and transcripting, right, which is kind of taking that and turning it into notes. So a person doesn't have to do it, a human doesn't have to do that, right? Okay, that's great. That's kind of step one. But step two really is the actionable part of that. So now maybe I have an agent that takes that information, okay, and creates to-dos from that, right? And automatically signs out to-dos to people, right? And then maybe the third stage is, hey, some of the stuff that you've assigned to me as a to-do, I'm going to tell an agent, hey, you know what, you can do that for me.
Right.
See?
On that note, Microsoft also released the project manager agent. And of course, every company, right, has projects that help drive them forward. Every IT organization has projects, right? And so I'm really excited about the power of this project manager agent. Share with me what you've experienced with the project manager agent. And maybe I'll share some of the things that I'm kind of making it do.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we saw last year was that Microsoft offered a Copilot extension to project type within Planner. What that allowed you to do is it allowed you to add a Copilot sidecar into Planner and basically ask it questions of your Planner project, or maybe have it perform tasks, but you had to kind of prompt it to tell it to do stuff, and it's still there, right? But the project manager agent, though, takes it to another level, right? Because now you have, again, it's an active team member that actually can perform tasks on your behalf, right? And so what it may do, I'll give you an example, and this is part of, again, what you need to do when you set up your plan is you need to tell it, what are your objectives, what are your goals, and so on and so forth, right? Because these are the instruction sets that are used by the project manager agent to know when and how it should step in and handle something, right? And when I say handle something, it'll kind of automatically do that, or maybe it'll do it, but you have to approve it, okay? But the idea here is it's going to take action. It's going to take action based on the direction and the goal that you tell it to do. So an example might be you say, hey, you know what? If I have tasks that are late, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to reassign the task into another bucket called late tasks. And then I'd like you to produce a report and email it to me. Okay. Well, I mean, before the project manager agent, you'd have to do that yourself, right? But that's an example.
Yeah, Kurt, of course, our world is driven by projects, right? And so what we've done recently with some other of our team members, go with me here. We need to have a project briefing. Okay, it's a Teams call. We all go through, okay, this is what we're going to accomplish. This is our timeline, etc. These are the objectives. This is what good looks like. I ask my Copilot after that meeting to create, let's say, a project charter, right? A charter has all the elements to get a project going. I take that over and I give it to my project manager agent. That agent has now created the project plan for me. It's assigned the resources, it's estimated task, and it's assigned itself the next tasks. Blown away, right? I have a conversation. We all agree to do something. I can take that with Copilot, give it to the project manager agent, and now I have a project plan, task estimates. And then going forward, of course, now it's reminding me this is what's on track and this is what's not on track. A cumbersome item, oftentimes for project managers is to kind of track down status. My project manager agent can create the status, right, based on the inputs from the team members in their tasks, and then escalate. It's mind-boggling amazing, and I know we're only at the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, I'll urge people to understand that the agents can be as autonomous as you want them to be, right? And you can always, or it's always important to have what's called HIDL or human in the loop. And you obviously can still do this through approvals, and these kinds of things. So, again, not this isn't sort of the agents are going to take over the world. Right. they still report to us humans. So.
Right. Co-pilots, helpers. All right. So as we start to wrap up today's discussion, from your perspective, what should technology leaders be prioritizing as they're planning to adopt and scale their agent solutions? What do they need to be prioritizing?
Yeah. So first of all, you can't bury your head in the sand. I think most technology leaders understand that. You've got to do something, or the something will do something to you. Through shadow IT or something like this, right? So you've got to be proactive. Number one. Number two, I would say that you need to ensure that governance is in the back of everything that we've talked about here, right? Data governance, security, agent governance, these kinds of things, right? You can't roll something out that you can't control. Thirdly is try to identify those quick wins, the low-hanging fruit, within the context of a strategy, right? But a strategy sometimes can seem far off, right? You've got to start somewhere. And so try to identify those green dollar, blue dollar projects that can offer the greatest return, and then start small. Start small, get quick wins, and then as you begin to get good traction and adoption in the organization, keep going. All
right. Thanks so much. Today, I always learn something new, Kurt, when we get to chat. I'm going to go ahead and bring today's office hour to a close. and encourage everyone who has a chance to learn about the Microsoft Build announcements. And wherever you are in your journey, feel free to reach out to Covenant Technology Partners, Kurt, who's super active on LinkedIn, and we're happy to have a conversation. All right, take care and have a great week.